Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
We have a special show tonight. Hey, Charlie Robinson, why did you explore the dualities of American culture in your riveting new book, Hypocrazy?
I had to do it. It was a compulsion. I had to write about it. I started compiling research documents accidentally. I had finished my second book, The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire, and while I was while I was still finishing that up, I was compiling story after story, crazier than the last one, of hypocritical behavior in the government and in the media stories about some of people saying one thing and doing another thing and just constantly getting busted for this. And I'd find an interesting article, I'd clip it, I'd save it, I'd put it in a file. I got to a point where I went through the file and there was so much information in there, and I had to figure out how to best organize it. So what I did was the book Hypocrazy, Surviving in a World of Cultural Double Standards, and I focused on 8 main topics just to kind of get us going. I didn't want to. I could have continued on writing endlessly about all these different components of this, but I decided to focus on 8 primary ones. I went after the woke mob because they're just hysterical. I couldn't ask for such comedy gold than what the woke mob gives me, so I had to take that. I went after the corporate media and their, the disgustingness of them. I went after the cult of COVID. I went after religion because when you're talking about hypocrites, you got to talk about organized religion, and I recognize that makes some people angry. But if I'm going to be honest and if I'm going to be objective about this, you got to drag religion into it as well. I took on big business. I went after the war machine. I went after the government and then society in general. So nobody was left out. There's literally 400 footnotes in this book. The insanity that is currently happening in this world is so remarkable and pervasive that I had to make sure that I gave everybody the proper footnotes, because some of the things are so insane that you would just assume, I would assume, that the author was being hyperbolic or trying to be funny, or I couldn't be funny enough to come up with some of the concepts that are in the book, some of the insanity that we're experiencing. So I wanted to do this. I wanted to take a snapshot of what we're currently experiencing here in America, The hypocrisy is rampant. I wanted to do it in a way that was funny, that made light of these things so that we could digest them and not get too frustrated with them, and so that we can then eventually move past and fix these things. So that's where the impetus for the book came from. It was a lot of fun. I'll be honest with you, the hardest part about writing the book was whittling out all the stuff that wasn't going to go in it. Was trying to, because there was too much information. If you're talking about the mainstream media's endless lies and their hypocrisy, that's a book in and of itself. So I had to sort of get in there and get real honest about, okay, what's the funny part? What's the serious part? What's this other stuff? Well, let's cut that out. So I had to make the book a manageable size as well after my first two, or a little lengthy. So I decided to make this one. This is for the people. This is. I think everybody can appreciate this one. This is the type of Christmas gift you give to somebody, and you're either going to get a funny response when they read it. You're going to get, that was a good one, or you're going to trigger them to the point where you break their brain. Either way, I'm fine with it.
Okay, so you said it was fun to write. So do you identify as being Carlin-esque?
What does Carlin-esque mean?
Like George Carlin?
Oh, Carlin-esque. Oh, Carlin-esque. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez. Listen,
your book is funny.
Well, thank you very much. But George Carlin is in. I have him on my Mount Rushmore. Okay, he is up there. I aspire to be Carlin-esque. But here's the thing: is that I learned how I process information, and how I process it is that I need a little laugh. I need a little. I needed Jon Stewart at The Daily Show. I needed him to show me serious stories about things that were actually happening, but I needed it delivered in a way that was kind of smart-assy and funny. And that worked for me. I laughed at the absurdity of it all, but I understood the message. And George Carlin, I put him in a category like that as well, right? Obviously, he could write history books that would be far more accurate than any history book you're ever going to read in high school. So he's got this, that's the beauty of being the Joker, is that you get the benefit of people saying, well, he's just being funny. We let him say whatever he wants to say. He's a little wacky and kind of crazy. He says those things, but he's just having fun. Well, is he? Yes, he gets the flexibility to say these things, but is it just fun, or is there truth there? And so that's how I appreciate anybody that can blend the seriousness of the topics that George Carlin covered with the absolute hilarious nature in which he delivered his message. I find that to be something that is, I find myself thinking, like, what would George Carlin say about where we currently are? What would George Carlin have to say about the woke mob? What would he say about BLM? Oh my goodness, like, I'm dying to know. 53 genders plus George Carlin equals something that I would definitely watch. So I just try to come at from a way that I just try to infuse my dark sense of humor, and some people will get it, and some people will not, and I fully understand that, and I recognize that my sense of humor may not be for everyone, but I do think that it helps the bad news go down a little bit, because I've got bad news for you. The society is coming apart at the seams right now. And so we have to laugh at it to keep from crying about it. So if you can find a way to balance that, if you can find a way to deliver this real serious message about kind of where we are as a society and what is happening and what is this cultural Marxism that's creeping in, and it sounds really scary, and what does it mean? So you got to take all of that serious and find a way to make it fun. And that's tough to do. So if I'm able to do it, if I'm able to get you, laughing a little bit at the insanity of it, I think that it'll help you sort of hang in there to get as much of the story as possible. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going with it. But George, to put me in any sort of category with George Carlin would be, though very flattering, would be extremely premature. But maybe one day, right? Maybe if I'm allowed to continue doing what I'm enjoying doing, maybe we can have that conversation decades from now.
Yeah. George was the master. You're an apprentice, or whatever you call it, a journeyman. No, you're.
It's okay. I'll take that.
Yeah. So, like for an example, last year, all the Robert E. Lee statues were pulled down. Any Confederate soldier or general was open target. Just destroy their that part of history. But you're saying that the demographics of those people who are so offended that their favorite TV show is South Park.
Right. And yet they've missed the mark completely, right? That they're offended by statues, but like they love South Park. Like, how do you reconcile that in your brain? I love South Park too. I think it's fantastic. But to me, that is incongruent with them going out and being offended by statues. It's weird to me. That's part of the woke culture that makes me simultaneously horrified but the writer in me fascinated with it, just absolutely fascinated with that line of thinking and that mentality and all of the rituals that go along with it and all of the things that they've prioritized in their heads as being important. I find myself completely disconnected from those people in a way that they must feel the same towards me if they knew that I existed. But like as a writer, it's just comedy gold. You can't do anything funnier than what the woke mob is doing right now. It's just a never-ending source of comedy if you look at it that way. I know some people get really triggered on Twitter and they freak out and they get into these big battles with these people. But if you can back away from that and come at it from like a humorous approach and watch what's going on there, it's the greatest show in the world. It's just insanity. It's mental illness masquerading as like manners, like trying to be so inclusive so that nobody gets their feelings hurt, and in the process hilarity ensues. It's like the greatest television show in the world, just watching this play out and just watching them just keep stepping on the proverbial rake, and smacking themselves in the face with the rake pole, they're just going in circles doing this over and over again, and you just have to keep laughing. And the pronouns and the 53 genders and I had to list them all in the book. I mean, all the ones that Facebook had, and they make zero sense. But that's part of the gold. Is that when you look at that list, you go, this list makes no sense, and then you just go, isn't that great? Isn't that hysterical? So anyway, I've had to approach this from a totally different direction. Well, I've had to, just for my own mental health, sanity, well-being, all that stuff, I've had to approach this from just the comedy side.
Okay, well, okay. That's one approach to dealing with what's going on. Others obviously want to take another approach that's actually detrimental to themselves as well as others. And I was just thinking, about today's anniversary. This show wasn't. It was originally set up for another day, and just because you're on tonight, it had nothing to do with the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and watched a little flip through the channels, and a couple 100-year-old sailors who were on one of the ships, and they expressed what was retold what was going on, expressed how they felt about it 80 years later. I thought that was it was powerful. They lived in that one of the most deadliest moments in American history, and I just wonder what, just say those two survivors of Pearl Harbor would think about it, like America just goes from these like celebrity type legal cases and trials. You had the Brian Landry drama a couple months ago, and then the Kyle Rittenhouse. Now the Jussie Smollett. I don't even know what you call that.
I don't either. Performance art, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's just going on as entertainment now, and real stories like the Maxwell trial. People don't even know what's going on there. Who's that? Type thing. I just wonder, like what. I just wonder what. Like, these 100-year-old servicemen from Pearl Harbor really think about. Is this garbage? What I was doing in Pearl Harbor when I was a kid.
Yeah, I bet they're just paying attention to what's going on,
But they seemed like they were pretty sharp guys.
Yeah, if they're paying attention to what's happening, I would have to think that they've been disappointed for quite a while. I mean, because we've made some catastrophic geopolitical decisions and some of the wars we've been involved in and the things that like that. I would assume that these guys have a viewpoint on war that none of us can really imagine. being in it, being a part of that, knowing what that fear is like, knowing what, I couldn't comprehend that. So they've got a perspective on the world that is really, really tough to replicate. And it's a good question, Mark. I mean, like, what could they be thinking now? They could be thinking how disappointed they are. They could be thinking, hey, listen, you're on the verge of what started this sort of behavior that was the precursor to World War II, the World War that they fought in. We're starting to see, talk of passports and controlled movements and putting people in camps and things like this. This is the beginning of World War II types of stories, behavior modification, identification, quarantining, things like that. I mean, I wonder if they're thinking, that we need to be paying attention and that we don't want to have to do this again, where we wind up in some crazy war trying to fight for our freedoms again. So I don't know. I would, my assumption is they would be disappointed, because it just seems like where America was, and I know America's not perfect, very, very far from it, but still, what America was or what America represented in 1945 or, right after the war, and that goodwill that we had for or at least the perception that we were like the good guys, and we squandered that over the decades, getting our noses into business that didn't belong and starting wars and lying about it and things like that. How could they not be disappointed? To take that reputation that they had post-war to where, to how America was viewed by the rest of the world versus how we're viewed now, they're terrified of us. They look at us as that big drunk who's in the bar bumping into people, picking fights, acting like a jerk, living off its reputation for a long time. We look like that to the rest of the world, and they don't know if we're going to swing at them. You know what I mean? Just turn around and just go, what are you looking at? Swing at them, because we're so unpredictable and crazy. So my assumption is that they probably are disappointed with our standing in the world. But it'd be great to ask them.
Yeah, I that was just more of a spur of the moment type question, just brought on by the anniversary. It just seems like those guys who are 19, 20 years old were fighting against the threat to republic, democracy, however you want to look at it. And here it is, just the same. What they were fighting against is just now becoming prevalent throughout America.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the interesting aspects you bring up in your book is just different, like the 8 different sections where you talk about the media, woke mob, or we're going to cover a lot of them, but all those corporate entities and institutions are all responsible for that. This certainly isn't the same America from my childhood.
Now the corporations have taken over, the think tanks, the non-governmental organizations. They've sort of hijacked the country, and they've offshored it, and they've drained the money out of it. They've sucked the intellectual property out of it. They've offshored most of the manufacturing jobs. I mean, that's why Berwick and I wrote that book, The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire. I mean, we just said, look, this is a country, this is an empire that has been rigged with detonators, and it is slated for demolition. You might want to get out of the way, you know, because, and so we broke that down just sort of step by step and making the comparison between how you would, you know, take down a building and how you would take down an empire. And so while I was writing that book with Jeff, I started Hypocrazy. So I had the same sort of ideas that were carrying over, and it was like, you know, corporations are coming in and they're really, you know, once we had Citizens United where corporations could donate as much as they wanted to politicians, I mean, it was over at that point. It's like, what are you going to do? You're going to compete against your interests versus Amazon's interests? Like they've got enough money to make it go their way every single time. The best you can do is hope that your interests just happen to align with what these big monolithic institutions want. Because otherwise, you're screwed. You have no representation anymore in your government. So, you know, I described it in the book as like they got into the House, you know, these lobbyists and all this corporate money got into Congress, they got into the government, and then they rekeyed the locks. And you come home thinking that your democracy key is going to fit in there and that your government officials are going to be working on your behalf, and you realize your key doesn't work. It's been swapped out. The corporations have changed the locks on you. You're no longer welcome. And so that's a realization that people have been making over the last couple of decades. They've realized, hang on a second, like what I want doesn't matter at all. It's what Facebook wants. It's because they've got the lobbyists and they've got a direct pipeline from the White House into Facebook. You know, so we have to sort of like, I think a lot of people have become demoralized of what the government has become, and they look at it and they rightly think, what's the point anymore? What's the point of supporting? Why vote for these people? And that was one of the funniest things, for just a sort of like interesting coincidental bit of timing, but when Jeff Berwick and I released the Controlled Demolition book, we put it out the Friday before the elections. And on Election Tuesday, it became a #1 bestseller in the United States and Australia. And the irony is that if you read the book, you'll never vote. You'll just never participate. You'll just never, ever want to participate in that action anymore. And so we thought, well, you know what? The election has been decided. The book wins. We don't like either of these two guys. We don't like Trump. We don't like Biden. We don't like these guys. These guys are awful.
Yeah, the pen is mightier than the sword. But
we were hoping.
Yeah, there's you just mentioned, you know, what's the point of voting? And you do mention in the Controlled Demolition of America that the destruction of America started with the Declaration of Independence. It's been an ongoing process for, 250 years, or about 250 years. And one of the most popular books, it's been out for a couple weeks, just a couple weeks, is with it what's Molly, I just forgot her last name. She wrote Rigged.
Oh, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. I have to look that up doing a show. But it just kind of ties in with what you've been saying about it. You almost don't care anymore. Molly Hemingway.
Got it. Yeah, it says how the
media, big tech,
and Democrat.
Seized our elections by Molly Hemingway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That sounds like something right up my alley. I haven't heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's I think it just came out very recently, and it's doing very well. You just really have to wonder, how long has this been going on? You happen to mention, it's like just 20 years. Things have gotten bad, but in your other book, your and Jeff's book, you're taking it back even farther, and how long had these globalists really been envious of America? Let's just get rid of America. That would be part of the duality that continues to go on. A lot of Americans want their freedom, but this other group, how many of these commentators just sit there and talk about all this, the Soros-funded organizations that are supplying the looting materials,
right?
And nothing's being done about it. That's in your book as well.
Yeah, during the riots, this is part of the book that I had to footnote this. This was an example of I had to footnote this story because otherwise it sounds like I'm just trying to make a joke out of it. But during the mostly peaceful protests, there were pallets of bricks that were showing up on the scene, right? They weren't there for any sort of construction project. They weren't there for renovations or anything of the sort. They just were there on the corners. But they had the name of the company that was delivered, or I don't know if they were delivering them or it was their brick company, and the name of the company was Acme Bricks, and it's like the Roadrunner in Coyote, you know what I mean? And so I'm in my mind I'm immediately going like, this is really serious. Like they've got the Roadrunner and Coyote involved in it now. Like this is a serious riot. They've got Acme Brick. And then I started thinking, they're clearly messing with us, right? There's no possible way that, besides the fact that I'm not even talking about the fact that there's bricks there. I'm talking about the name of the brick company that is straight out of the Roadrunner cartoon, right, where he's always dropping bricks on people and things like that. And right. I feel like I feel like there's part of me that kind of respects them doing that because it's so funny. It's so funny that that's why I had to document it, because it's like, it's not me trying to be funny. It's just the situation is funny. That there's this obvious overlap and parallel for anyone in like my Generation X, right, watching those cartoons. And then for that literal brick company cartoon-like style to just be there with a big sign on it, you have to appreciate it. You just have to laugh at the absurdity of it all. But then after you get through that, right, after you get through that layer of laughing at how crazy it is, then we have to talk about the situation that there's actually bricks there, and that somebody paid for them and somebody delivered them there, and they're there for a very specific reason. And the reason is that they want people to pick them up and throw them through windows. So you have to ask yourself, who wants this to happen? It's the next logical question. Of course, if you do that in some circles, you're a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist who's anti-America or something. But where I come from, I want to know who these people are. And so it's like it doesn't take much to figure out it's Soros-connected companies, and he's financing this. And this is a color revolution, much like the Rose Revolution, the Kyrgyzstan revolution that he was a part of. This is the Black Revolution, the Black Lives Matter revolution, financed and brought to American soil by George Soros, perpetrated co-conspirators, the mainstream corporate media, which legalized propaganda to be used inside the United States on Americans through the Smith Modernization Act of 2012. And who put that through? Obama put that through to legalize lying because he was fixing to do some lying. Okay? And so this is America right now. It's legal for them to lie to you. The government took the extraordinary step of changing the original 1948 Smith-Mundt Act, which prohibited this, since we were already talking about World War II. You come out of World War II. You just saw what propaganda does to people. You saw how bad that is. So they make the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which prohibits propaganda to be used on the American people. We can use that on other countries. That's totally cool. But we can't use it on our own people because we saw how bad that went just a couple years ago, and we don't want any part of that. Obama changed that. He changed that so that they could lie. And now, I would say over the last 2 years, have we not just been inundated with lies on a variety of topics, not just the one that we're not allowed to talk about? So
yeah, we have. Yeah.
It's frustrating to recognize that, you know. It's just frustrating that you know, it's like with all the things you could be doing, all the problems that are happening in this country, all the things that you could be prioritizing your time, you sought to go legalize lying to the American people. Wow. You know, just wow. That's so when people are quick to defend, you know, what they see on television these days, like, you know, I saw this on MSNBC, it must be true, or I saw it on Fox News, you know. It's like, just remember that in that information sausage that you get, there is allowed to be a certain percentage of disinformation crickets allowed in the peanut butter mixture. You know what I mean? Like the allowable amount by the FDA, which is like 6.2 crickets per can or whatever. You know what I mean? Just know that there's the allowed lie component of it that's just straight lies, like direct from the CIA. There's going to be part of that in the nightly broadcast. Good luck figuring out what it is, right? It all gets kind of mixed in there. So that's where we are. We're in an information war with the mainstream media allowed to lie to us, and that being brought on and cheerleaded by the new Biden administration, which has I mean, to put it mildly, has a problem with the truth. And please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to say that I thought Trump's administration was being truthful either, but this Biden administration is a very, very peculiar flavor of lies. They're very unusual. It's a strange sort of like, I feel like I'm watching a television show of a presidency, but it's not real. And so it feels kind of like a really kind of poorly produced show. And like they're not in the Oval Office, right? They're at like sound studios and stages.
Yeah, the Playhouse, the Oval Office Playhouse.
Yeah. It's like none of it in and of itself is necessarily like alarming, but just sort of added all together, the fakeness you remember when I just keep I brought this up. I think I put it in the book. If I didn't put it in the book, then shame on me. But the part where this summer where Biden was in the electric SUV and he was at the like a racetrack someplace, and the media walked up to the car, and the media was like, "Oh, Mr. Biden, were you going fast in the car? Were you they were talking to him like he's 4, and he was like, and he peeled away. When he was done talking with the media, he peeled away. But in the freeze frame, you could, when people like played it back online, and you could see the freeze frame or a couple of the frames, it was clear that the guy in the passenger seat had a steering wheel there as well, and he was the guy that was actually driving the car, right? There were 2 steering wheels in the car, and that guy had access to one too, and he was driving. And I remember watching that going, this is the perfect metaphor for America. Biden is in the car, right? He's in the driver's seat, and he's got his hands on the steering wheel. In this case, or in reality, he has his hands on the steering wheel, but he has it on the proverbial steering wheel of America. And yet, in the passenger seat, there's some dude who we couldn't see who it was, but he was really driving the car, the real car. But in my mind, it's like, who's that guy in the Biden administration? Who's really driving the car? Who's driving the proverbial Biden car? Is it the pharmaceutical industry? Is it China? Is it Israel? Like, it doesn't feel like it's us. Is it the woke mob? Like BLM? Like, who's driving? Who's the actual driver of this car? And I just thought that was so, like, symbolic of America. Like, we don't even know who's driving. But the media is going to make it look like their guy is. But then you see like a little peek behind the curtain, and you go, oh, but actually it's not that at all. The media is just doing the media thing again, So a strange time to be awake and aware of all of this stuff.
And with the example you just gave of the who was the real driver in the photo shoot at the car assembly place. You also had I don't know if you saw that one clip where the president's doing something with his hands, and it looks like it's going through a microphone.
Yeah.
And it's like, it looks like a green screen, one of the effects that you get from using a green screen, where stuff kind of bleeds through other images. So, we're talking about the sound studio of the fake Oval Office. Like, what's really going on?
Right. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Go on.
And you do have a section on Hollywood, DC. I think it's in your the Controlled Demolition book. Hollywood, DC, in the Demolition. Yeah, and there was Tom Hanks was kind of what the first celebrity to get an illness we're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah,
but that kind of he's what pretty much Hollywood royalty now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you enlist him, see, oh, put on this act that he got all sick, and it just prepares the people for what has been planned for us.
Yeah.
It just really seems like the last few years have been like a movie.
Yeah. Let's go back to the Biden thing for a second. I remember what you were talking about. The hand, it's like a microphone passed like through his hand, and it was very unnatural, and it looked very green screened. And so you see that, and you say, okay, that's green screen. And then you go, well, why would they do that, right? Well, maybe it was because it was cold outside or something, you know what I mean? And they didn't want to have him out there. Or maybe I don't know, maybe they wanted to do a couple takes of it, so they just faked it and everything. And you go, that's not the worst crime I've ever heard our government be accused of doing, right? So you just kind of go, well, it's not an egregious crime. It's just a little unusual. But then you get more and more and more of those, and after a while, it starts to paint a picture that there's just something very inauthentic about what you're seeing. It's kind of hard to put your finger on it. Then you meet the vice president, Kamala Harris, and she can't answer questions, and she cackles when she's nervous, and she laughs at things you're not supposed to laugh at, and she's very inauthentic, and she does these commercials about NASA, and she brings these kids in that they're all paid actors, and she acts like a total freak, and people watch this, and they go, I understand now why she got no delegates, like when she was running for president. She's really unlikable and very inauthentic as a human being. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. I'm trying to be, honest to God.
That's true.
There's something about her that's very inauthentic. It's that same thing that Hillary Clinton has, too. It's like they're trying hard to not be psychopathic, but it's just their nature. And so I see her, I see Kamala Harris, and look, great that a woman is vice president. I mean, I think that's cool. And a woman of color, cool, that's totally fine too. But it's like, I mean, I don't care one way or the other who the vice president is, but I guess if that's a big step for women, then I'm all for it. I'm married to a woman. I have a daughter. Right? I like that when those things happen. But she's a diversity pick. Let's be honest, because she's completely unqualified, becoming painfully obvious. And Zero Hedge is running articles about her now, saying like the article that was yesterday, talking about how like she is really unlikable. And she fires people for, and a third of, like a ton of turnover in
staff.
Her staff already are leaving. Mm-hmm. There's rumors that there's even more people leaving. I mean, it is a sinking ship over there. And then you have Joe Biden, right? And then and people go, well, I mean, who is this guy? And I don't mean that like, it's like, he doesn't seem like he's the same guy he used to be. And he's suffering cognitively. And that's not, again, not trying to be mean or disrespectful, just an observation. And I think a reasonable observation, you get to that age, he's got a lot of miles on him. He's not functioning clearly. All right. So it's like, but to talk about that gets you now branded as being like a conspiracy theorist, or worse, a Republican. They will call you, you're a Republican for saying that. It's like, why do I have to be on one team or the other? Can't I just make a casual observation? Our president is suffering mentally. I mean, our previous presidents were all suffering mentally. Let's be crystal clear. They're all psychopaths. But this one is misfiring. Like there's something not working with him. But they're in a bind because they can't replace him with her. because she's more unlikable than him. And so we're in this, like get your popcorn, like this is just going to be like a total disaster. And it's going to go on and on and on, and it's going to become so undeniable. But the press will continue to not deny its existence, right? That everything's fine with them both. What are you talking about? Don't believe your eyes, right? I fully expect this presidential administration to disintegrate right in front of our eyes, and it's going to be wild to watch it. They're deeply unpopular. they're like hated.
Yeah, the getting involved with a major constitutional issue, like 25th Amendment. That would actually be interesting to sit back and watch how, like what the first case really unfolds. I don't. Other than the president had a medical procedure, and while he was unconscious, Kamala was technically president.
Right.
But to actually remove a president, and you hear that being bandied about all the time now, but
yeah, and they did it with Trump too. They talked about getting him out because he's a certifiable maniac. They're like, we're going to get him out. He's crazy. But with Biden, it's like, we got to get him out because he's like maybe medically not up to the task. And to be clear, who is? That's a challenging job, even for the best of us. But undeniable that he's in some sort of disrepair. I think that's putting it.
And what do you do if the vice president really isn't qualified? This is totally unprecedented, and it would be fascinating to just sit there and watch what happens.
Yeah. I mean, if you think you don't know who's driving the proverbial Biden car, wait till Kamala Harris gets in the driver's seat. Then who knows who's in that secret passenger seat with the extra steering wheel, because she's not going to be in charge of anything. She can't get anything done. She has no political clout at all. People think of her as a nothing burger, but a mean one and a vindictive one. She's got a bad reputation in Washington, D.C. It's undeniable now. And so what do, right? You can't make her the president. I mean, maybe like the woke mob would be like, oh, yes, she's, things are going to change, right? Maybe they'd be super excited about it. Do you think how easily she'd be manipulated into getting us into some sort of war? I mean, she'd be immediately pressured to bomb Iran. Immediately. And she'd be too weak to deny it. And we'd be in a war within days. I mean, Biden, for all his insanity, and God knows he's filled to the brim with it, he's got a little bit more political clout than Kamala Harris does. She's just a nothing in that world. And so as such, she can be moved right out of the way. So then you don't know who's running the show. But you just assume you assume it's been a corporate coup, and it's being run by Eric Schmidt from Google, being run by deep state,
the big tech people.
Yep.
But
Brian Moynihan, who wants to spend $6 trillion a year to put Agenda 21 into place, says we're going to need $6 trillion a year. We're just going to have that. What?
Okay.
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, and I guess since you just led us into Agenda 21, yeah, that's part of the climate change stuff. You're involved in real estate, so why did President Obama invest a lot of money into a mansion on an island when the sea levels are supposed to be rising?
That is a good question.
Yeah, it sounds like. They told me I was supposed to ask a question, but I was like, that's aside from being a graduate of Harvard's brain like neurosurgery department, and you wrote Hamlet too, didn't you? Doesn't make any difference what the facts are, but why we talk about our lifestyles, and they must be changed, but China's exempt. But does anyone really talk about the chemtrails and the relation to the glaciers melting?
Right. Well, I always point people to the Club of Rome, their book Limits to Growth in 1971, where they laid out their crystal clear 2-paragraph dissertation about how they were going to use the idea of climate change as the pretext to create a carbon tax that will be used to form a one-world government. That's what they wrote in that. That's the Club of Rome, which is David Rockefeller and Dr. Alexander King. Dr. Alexander King is a co-founder of NATO. He was deeply involved in the Tavistock Institute. He's the founder of the Committee of 300. He's one of the most dangerous people to ever live. Those two guys started the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome's document 50 years ago explains the plan, how they're going to use the idea of climate change, whether it be real or one invented for this purpose. They talk about how they're going to just say it. And so I think it's important for people to understand that the inundation, the information war that's been waged against us over the last 18 months about this virus is going to pale in comparison to the propaganda war that we get from this day forward till the day we die about climate change, because it is the most important component of this global group out there. It is going to be the funding mechanism for the next 100 years. It's going to make central banking look like nothing. Their idea to tax you for carbon output and on limits that they arbitrarily set and then collect tax revenue on top of that is a scam so genius that you have to just stop in appreciation of it. And it's coming. And it's going to steal what's left of the world's wealth under the guise of saving the planet. And who could ever be against saving the planet, right? But when you watch, you watch these scientists, you watch the same thing that we've seen over the last 18 months. You see how fast these scientists get bought up and how fast these research institutions start saying the same thing. 12 years left, and the ice caps are going to melt. 12 years left. They've been saying that for 40 years. It's a gigantic carbon tax scam masquerading and hijacking a very real problem, which is pollution. So it's like they take all of the things that make you really angry and legitimately angry about what we're doing to this beautiful planet, right? All of this pollution, and they hijack that and they call that climate change. And you've got to pay for that. It's carbon. That's what the real problem is. It's like, no, the real problem is that the Ganges River is so polluted that it kills people. That's the real problem, not carbon in the atmosphere. Because that Icelandic volcano that went off a couple years ago, that real big one that went off for like a month, that put more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than all of humans' combustion engines, all of humanity combined. Okay, so stop with we're going to get to carbon zero because we have to save the planet. All it takes is one of those volcanoes, and it's all for nothing, okay? So, but that's where the scam lies, is that they've taken this idea of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is tree food, which is what we need. If we don't have that in the atmosphere, we're all going to die, right? But they've conflated that. They've confused everybody. And they're telling them that when the carbon tax comes out, the ironic thing will be that once they collect all this money, it's not like they're going to do anything about this problem anyway. And it's like, who decided that you get to collect the toll on this? Well, they did, because they're the World Economic Forum. So this is where we're headed. And I think that once people start to see, you get a Project Veritas undercover video at CNN with a producer, and the guy goes, we're going to be pivoting to climate change from now. Kind of done with the whole Biden-Trump stuff. And you hear that in these undercover videos, and you're like it just reinforces.
It's all planned.
Just understand, it's an agenda. It's all planned. It's not about saving the world. These are not the people that you would put in charge of saving the world. These are the worst people in the world. These are the worst people in the world, not the saviors. So it's just I think that people should kind of start to question the climate narrative immediately, because there's a lot of agenda in there.
Okay, well, you just mentioned people really should be questioning, the climate agenda. Greta seems to have been used for her purpose, and she's out of the picture now. I'm sure they're grooming someone else, but you do cover in both of your books critical thinking and how that's being deliberately eliminated from this natural human ability. Spend a little bit of time talking about how schools and churches standardized tests help to eliminate that, and that's where you get the commentators for Mike Dice's videos that Attila the Hun was the first president of the United States.
Right. Well, it's our education system is in America has been hijacked. Bill Gates financed Common Core, and Common Core has been the most destructive education policy in American history. And it's screwed up a whole generation of kids that don't know how to think because they're in these Common Core programs. And it's like woke mathematics. Think about that for a second. It's like if you show if it's 3 times 4 equals 12, and you just write that out because that's what it is, and you memorized it, you'll get partial credit. But if you write 3 times 4 equals 11, and you're able to show your work, they'll give you partial credit for that, right? So what they do is they start incentivizing bad, incorrect math equations. They start giving them sort of points for being almost right. And so then what it does is well, first of all, it's normalizing insanity too. When it's like, oh, I showed my work how I got 11, and I got points. It's like, yeah, but you got it wrong. The answer is not correct. So it's like I have to go drive across a bridge that's going to be built by engineers that know that there is one answer in mathematics, the correct answer, right? Anything else is wrong. So I want those guys building the bridges. But instead, we're going to have a new generation of Common Core kids who learned that 3 times 4 equals 11 amps, close enough. And now go build the bridge off the specs that we made that are close enough. So it's like it's a weird, and they're talking about how kids are coming out of high school and they're 2 years behind when they get to community college. Like they need to take 2 full years of math just to be where they used to be normally as a freshman going in. So they're not just a little bit behind, they're a lot behind. And statistics are just horrible about what's going on in the schools. And it's been this intentional dumbing down. It's been this lowering of expectations and a cultural type of subversion that's real devious. And what you find is that, Bill Gates has learned a lot of this behavior from watching the Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers did the same thing, that when they started taking heat, they started the Rockefeller Foundation. Same thing with Bill and Melinda Gates. When Microsoft went through its antitrust suits, after that, Bill and Melinda Gates started their foundation so they could funnel, use that as a glamour operation that paints them in a particularly good light as a charitable organization. Same thing the Rockefeller Foundation did, right? But one of the other things that Bill Gates learned from them is to take over the education system. And that's where this guy has me just as concerned as his involvement in the pharmaceutical industry, is his role in the education system with Common Core. It's breaking kids' brains. It's introducing unusual concepts. You've got the guys that were responsible for the creation of it, disavowing it, traveling the country on their own dime, speaking out against it. Like, it's a big deal. So you ask the question, like, what's going on? Part of this is when you're an oligarch and you've bought everything that has a price tag on it, at some point you start looking for things that aren't for sale, like government and the education system and things like that. And so you start to get this undue and unusual amount of influence from one particular ideological group, the Rockefellers 100 years ago and the Gates Foundation today. So we're in a real dangerous time as long as these guys are in charge of educating America.
Yeah, when I was teaching, one of several things I didn't like about the textbooks was there were you get from and whatever. It's like just like one chapter from just say Moby Dick. Since I brought could have brought that up earlier, but it gives you a false sense of reading the entire book. If you just have the last couple chapters in there, the big finale between Ahab and Moby Dick. Well, you missed everything that, the first trip that, where bit off his leg and introducing Ishmael and Queequeg and all this other like post-traumatic stress disorder that Ahab's entire crew is kind of experiencing. It's not giving the students the full book. I really didn't want to shortchange their education, and kind of had to do it. It might be the only chance that they would actually have a chance to read the book, but it's kind of left me feeling like I shortchanged their education by following the textbook. I didn't like that. I mean, maybe next century it'll just be whittled down to, call me Ishmael, and that's enough to say you read all of an American classic. It's kind of like the close enough construction you were talking about. Kind of cut a few 2x4s like that too. But when it comes to building a bridge, I don't want to want both sides to meet.
I don't want a woke engineer who got passed through his classes because he was close enough. I want the engineer that didn't have to take remedial math after suffering through the new woke America culture factory that is doubling as indoctrination camp for the kids. It's just the craziest time.
Yeah, and let's just say that the high school seniors who will be graduating in May of 2022 had three school years chopped up. They weren't normal. Wearing a mask. Meeting. Occasionally. Prior to 2019, or the 2019 school year was the last normal year they had, and those seniors would have been you're saying 2 years behind.
Yeah.
Now the 2022 graduates are going to be 4 or 5 years behind. As I get older, I don't want someone who has had role models in the science community lying and perpetuating half-truths, to be my doctor. These today's role models have really done a disservice to younger kids.
Oh, I agree.
You can be really wrong in today's world, and you get rewarded, failing upwards. I like to have a job like that.
Yeah, but I bet it doesn't feel very good to your soul. I mean, I would hope these people feel like they're paying a price for this, because what I've been watching lately, this sort of, I don't know, indoctrination that's happening by this celebrity culture, this sort of real obvious push, I find it to be disgusting. You know, I find really disappointing too is all the rock stars, all the old punk rock guys that are just like, they're just like corporate, they're like pharmaceutical reps or something. You know what I mean? Like, and you I look at them and I go, who is Howard Stern? Oh my God,
Yeah,
what has he
heard
become?
that.
Like, I've never been more disappointed, but then I start thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't have been disappointed about that. Maybe I should have expected this. I don't know. I feel like it's so obvious that there's something crazy and insane happening right in front of our eyes, and the people that tell me to not believe what I'm seeing, I just lose respect for them for not being able to recognize what's going on. I'm not even saying you have to have it all figured out. I'm just saying acknowledge that there is something very wrong with our society right now at this moment. There's something very wrong. Like with what's going on in Australia, in Austria, and the normalization of process of all of this authoritarianism it's very wrong. Like something is broken. And the people out there, the celebrities that you're talking about, that are telling me everything is fine, everything's normal, you're the crazy person, man, I just don't trust them anymore. Not that I ever did, but you know what I mean? Like, but like, I liked Howard Stern. You know, I liked the way he fought the FCC. I liked the way he did this. I liked the way he was contrarian about things. I liked the way that he pushed boundaries. I liked that he made people mad. I liked that. That was kind of a punk rock thing to do. And maybe it's a little played up, and you know, and I get all that. But whatever. What it is now, I just don't connect with. And it's this like, how dare you challenge what the corporate media says or what the pharmaceutical industry says? How dare you challenge that? You know, and it's like, whoa, aren't you the guy that like built your reputation on challenging the establishment? Now you're like a cheerleader for it? That's disgusting. What's wrong with you? Where's Fart Man? I want that guy back. Yeah. I don't want woke Howard Stern. It's annoying and weird.
No,
and I feel like he's. I feel like going like blink twice if you're being held against your will. Like, how can you possibly be this punk rock attitude and be shilling like this? It's just weird to me.
Yeah, and calling your boss pig vomit.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, see, I don't do that to Barbara, but I'm not that punk. But I like the way Howard did it.
Yeah, but that's a challenging authority vibe, you know. It was a great show. I remember listening. Yeah, in Private Parts, you know, the movie they made about the book of his life, a fantastic movie, a hilarious movie, a really well done movie, and to see that, you know, to see like the sort of edginess, the sort of like desire you have to, you know, the fearlessness you have to fight the system, and then to just be like, to become like a cheerleader for it. It just, it makes me go, oh, well, you know what? Thank God. Maybe thank God George Carlin isn't around, you know. I don't know if I could handle losing him. I don't think I would. I don't think he'd ever not recognize what's happening. But still, you know what I mean? You never would have thought Howard Stern would become this, or Rage Against the Machine would be like telling you not to rage against the machine. It's just disappointing. That's all. It's nothing major. It's no big deal or anything. It's just kind of like, that sucks. I liked them, but well, I guess not anymore. That's just, and I just keep catching myself doing that over and over and over and over again, just going, well, there you go. That guy's cheerleading authoritarianism, right? Oh, wow, that is weird. Why would you do that? I guess I'm not going to be interested in them anymore, and it just is it's kind of adding up. I mean, are you seeing that too? Are you feeling the same things I'm feeling?
Yeah, I've been disappointed with some celebrities that came out in favor of a certain product, and another one said, I'm not going to play for my fans who are excluded by your venue. So that revived my admiration for Eric Clapton.
Yes.
Let's see. But let's see. Wait, I think I'm starting to feel a little dizzy. Monsieur Robinson, you are the author of Hypocrazy, and it is magnifique. I think I just had an outer body experience, and I was transported to Paris. But what is it with these, like, fake accents like we had with Kamala about a month ago, and Trump saying China, and then you get Dan Rather, like 20 years ago, Dan Rather would be reading the news, and all of a sudden he'd say Nicaragua. It's like saying it in the language that they said, the local speakers would say it, and it makes him sound like he's fluent in the language, but he only said one word. And you work in these, a little section on the neuro-linguistic programming. What's the deal with what we hear in the media, and how does it relate to this scientific technique?
Oh my God, it's that Tony Robbins type stuff. A lot of that, there's certain like mannerisms that these people use. I picked up on it a long time ago. I'm a co-owner of a company that does media training for professional athletes. So we get guys ready for interviews and get them ready for the draft and commercials and stuff like that. So I would watch a lot of people in the media. And one of the things that you notice is that there are some people, politicians in particular, that have some very specific mannerisms. And it is almost as if they are trying to put a spell on the audience by doing things with their hands and their thumbs that are a little bit out of place. But it's part of this whole subconscious programming of people. The type of stuff, where you go to like a conference and there's a magician on stage and he pulls people up from the audience and tells them that, that they can see through this guy who's standing in front of them or whatever, some trip, some magician's trick. Uh-huh. And we laugh at that, and we're in the audience and we're watching that. We're going, that looks crazy, man, that it's having that effect on these people. And what you find out is that stuff is very real. And Tony Robbins and that whole crew has been using neuro-linguistic programming for a long, long time because it works. And you take that and then you add to it the technology side of things, which is your television and the wave pattern that it's coming into being beamed into your brain, and that it sets you at a certain wave function where you're more susceptible to certain types of information, and they've changed the sound frequency on the songs that you like from 432 to 445, and it's off by a little bit. You can't really put your finger on what it is, but something just feels a little fishy about it. And so what you realize is that we're completely under attack by the media. And in our television sets, we've allowed them to literally program us, which is thus the television programming concept. And we're lucky we have an original thought in our heads, as much as we're getting bombarded by these different methods. So that's what I came to understand, that we're, like, almost sort of like, don't feel bad because you're under attack from some real professionals, people that do this for a living. They know how to hack your brain and get you feeling one way or another. And they know how to turn off your brain so that you don't care about a lot of stuff. And they need to do that so that you're not, complaining about it. So I think that it's just an interesting scientific component of the lies. Like they've taken it. You got to give them credit. They've taken it to the full scientific realm to try and see how they can better manipulate us. But that is sort of the truth about what's going on, is that we're under attack and they're manipulating our minds, and it's really crazy.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to get into, is kind of approach the last quarter of the show, is who's behind this? What's their ultimate aim, objective? Is it just like the New World Order, that's predicted in the Book of Revelation?
They call themselves the New World Order, but I think that's just sort of almost like a catch-all term. And if we want to talk about specifics, the World Economic Forum is at the forefront of this, and the United Nations is most definitely involved as well. It's global, it's coordinated, it's part of a much bigger plan. It's part of the United Nations Agenda 2030 plan, which is lining up very nicely with what the World Economic Forum has planned, which is the you'll own nothing and be happy. You'll be living in micro apartments and lucky to be free, in air quotes. And so you've got these groups that are very real, and they're driving actual policies. And the World Economic Forum is the Davos crowd. It's the technocrat, billionaires, bankers, consortium of people with varied interests, but mostly I would describe them as the Fourth Reich. And I know that brings up like crazy connotations, but Jim Marrs wrote about that, about how Germany lost the war, but maybe the Nazis didn't. The Nazis just kind of shifted around, and the Nazis moved from Hugo Boss Nazi suits into Giorgio Armani custom suits, and they went to work on Wall Street. So this is by some accounts the Fourth Reich. The way they see themselves, the plans they have, the genocidal nature,
Yeah, we covered that, and
we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, Jim Mars's book was The Fourth Reich that you're talking about, and Barbara had a really good interview. And I think it was earlier this year with Len Kasten. He was, did discuss how many of the Nazi theories survived in America because they came over here on Operation Paperclip.
Yeah, I mean, we have, our entire NASA space program was founded by a team of Nazis through Operation Paperclip. They were the best. They had the V2 program. Werner von Braun was working on that. They imported him along with a ton of scientists, and not just physicists and those working in missiles, but also biologists and psychologists, and they brought a whole culture with them. And Prescott Bush, who's George H.W. Bush's dad, was the banker for Adolf Hitler. He was the American conduit. He should have been hanged for his role in that. So, the joke of the Bushes being like the American Nazis, part of that is anchored in a bit of reality. When you find the role of Brown Brothers Harriman, the banking system that Prescott Bush was running, you find Nazi fingerprints all over that. So, and two of those Bushes became presidents of the United States and did some awful stuff, started some wars. So, so I mean, I think that we could be experiencing, it might not be an exaggeration to call it the Fourth Reich. I mean, it's the same sort of philosophies and principles, and so maybe we should be paying attention. But they're making a lot of mistakes. What are this operation that we're living through right now? There's a lot of mistakes being made, so it's not going all according to plan. So I don't want to make people feel like despondent or anything. Like it's not over yet. I guess is my point, because the narratives are falling apart, and the mainstream media's credibility is really falling apart, and the lies are starting to become harder and harder to cover up and mask over, and the stories are more nonsensical. And it just feels like we're getting to a point where it's all just going to sort of break down. And I'm not even sure that that's the worst thing that could happen. You know what I mean? It just seems like the lie factory is just about to break down at some point.
How do we fight back against this global reset, which Glenn Beck has a new book coming out on that. But one of the things I really like about your books, buy Charlie's books. I get that creepy Joe whisper thing in there, but how do we win against these are just they consider themselves as elites, but they're also human. They're making mistakes. I think a lot of people are seeing through it probably started with 9/11. How do
9/11
we
did
win?
it for me. First, I think, yeah, I think boy, I don't know. I'm starting to reevaluate what my definition of winning is.
Stop them.
Yeah. Look, I think one component of this we have to all be aware of, or one sort of option that's always on. It should always be on our, in our repertoire, and that is, do not comply with unjust things. Do not if there's something that it goes against your soul. If you're being forced to make a decision against, maybe you're a boss and you're being forced to make a decision about what these days, and it does not sit well with you. Recognize that. Do not shortchange your soul in these times right now. Do not, if someone is telling you to do something that goes against the way you think you should be behaving, trust yourself and do not comply with this unjust nonsense that's happening. We need people to because if you're willing to comply with what the state is trying to roll out right now, just admit that it's over. We need people to be awake to what's happening. I don't mean woke. There's a difference. I mean aware of what is happening, aware of what is currently being done to us, aware that we're being inundated with lies, and we're trying to be they're manipulating us to feel a certain way or to think a certain way or to believe some people are dirty and other people are magically saved, and that this president is definitely real and they need you to believe this. So just start picking around at the edges and start asking some questions about what's really going on here. I think we're going to need everybody. Like right now, I feel like it's all hands on deck. Like everybody that can be helpful in stopping this insanity, this slow, I don't even know how slow it is, but this overtaking of society, this destruction of logic and freedom and all these things that are happening and under the guise of science. It's so weird but important, So I just want to stress to people that now is the time to wake up your friends and family to what's happening, because it feels to me like it's now or never. And maybe it's not. Maybe I'm overreacting. I hope I am. But it just feels like we're going to be pretty soon past the point of no return in terms of walking into this sort of digital slavery, this social credit system that runs your life type of thing. When we normalize that, man, it's over. Our version of normal is gone for good, and it's that. It's that big of a deal. So,
well, I'm sure you have a very low social score, and I'm sure you're pretty proud of that.
For sure.
Yeah. And and Barbara got in trouble. But that doesn't mean that this show is not going to get taken down first thing tomorrow morning. But we get we've had some troubles not being just having a reasonable discussion, and the fact checkers didn't like that, but that's okay.
It's hard to know what to talk, what you can talk about anymore. But that right there,
that's a design.
A tactic. Yeah, exactly. That's by design. That is the George Orwell newspeak, the only language that got smaller and smaller each year as they memory hold words. Like a whole. And I talked about this a little bit in the book. That the current administration, the current Congress has passed a new, God, I don't even know if it's an ordinance or whatever it is, rules for their for all the members of Congress. Like every year there's a new list of rules and everything. And in this new list that came out just a couple of months ago, they banned them from using the terms mother, father, brother, sister, uncle, cousin, grandfather, grandmother, like all of the terms that you use to describe the family, they ban them. You're not allowed to say those words in House of Representatives now. That's what it was. It was the House. And it made me think, if you can't destroy the family outright, then you can destroy the words that are used to describe the family. And that's the first step towards destroying the family, right? Just destroy the words that you use to describe who these people are in your life. If you no longer have the words to describe them in something like straight out of Orwell, if you no longer are allowed to use those words to describe them, then that relationship starts to sort of deteriorate, What is it anymore? It's not my brother. I'm not allowed to say brother. It's that guy over there. And then what does that do, like psychologically, over time, So this sort of stuff is happening. And it makes me think, like, why is that a priority? Like, someone had to draw up the paperwork for all of that. It required some sort of effort. And somebody thought that was a priority. And then they all got together and said, yeah, that we're changing the rules. We're going to change it to make all these words, make it so you can't say these words. Why? Were they getting a lot of complaints about the word brother being used? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But then you look at it and you go, oh, wait a second. Now, it makes sense if I look at it like this. If I was a cultural Marxist out to destroy the country, how would I go about doing it? Oh, I'd do that. Okay, well, that's what it is. So it's like subversion that's being carried out by our own House of Representatives against us. They're trying to destroy the concept of the family. And you just have to ask, like, why would they do that? Why would that be a priority with all the stuff going on right now? We can't find something else. Can't you destroy the family some other time? Do you have to do it right now? It just seems funny that that's a priority to them. Like, oh, we got to ban these words.
Yep. Yeah, and with the popularity of Mark Levin's American Marxism, you just have so many people who reject what's going on now, that they do not like it. I know people for 4 years, every 5 minutes while they were awake, they posted something totally unbelievable about Trump, but that exercised the orange man demon in them when they needed to go to their safe space. but you do not see the same people saying, I just love these higher gas prices, and I love them so much. I want to fill up your tank. You do not see any of the same people posting that. Just send me the bill for your weekly gas. There's. It just seems like the majority of American people really do not like this elitism that has been around for a long time. You wrote about it in a Controlled Demolition with Paul Pott. Get rid of the smart people first.
Exactly.
There was the Lippmann's, the specialized class.
Right.
You get other people who think that they're the elites, like the Klan. There's what's interesting about your books is you kind of give us these mindsets of the people who want us to believe this stuff, and a lot of it just kind of just goes against nature, or it's denial of the existence of some things. I think we're learning a lesson with all this being this kind of philosophy being demonstrated, put on the media, if you can believe that, in books. Your book, just say Mark Levin's. There's some other, what's it? The Hansen from the Hoover Institute. I think you do present this really hardcore information about some really dangerous philosophies in a comical way that people can understand it. You have, that's one of the nice things about using dualities is you have a nice contrast. I better not use that one. One example is like stopping the building of the southern border wall, but you have a wall around the Capitol and Biden's weekend retreat. You can learn something about who's making these decisions and why. I think those are just a few examples that can be found in your books that we need to understand and not just go along with, well, because so-and-so said it, we really should comply for the common good of everyone. It doesn't work.
No. And the common good, That's what they say when they want to manipulate us, you know, and
Yeah.
get us thinking a certain way. Well, I mean, hey, who could be against the common good? You must be a bad person if you're against that, you know. So it's just constant manipulation of emotions and information and trying to get us to feel one way and support one thing and not support the other thing and support a new war and don't think about the consequences and, hey, we want to have this Build Back Better thing and it's going to cost $3.5 trillion. But actually, when you think about it, it actually costs $0. So it costs nothing, everybody. So because my new thing costs nothing, and you're just looking at around going, are you putting me on? Like, are you for real here? Is this really what you're saying? Well, no, I feel like I'm watching some sort of bizarre performance where this guy is pretending to be the president, and they come out and they say, well, yeah, it costs $3.5 trillion, but it's going to be offset by this other stuff, and so it's going to cost nothing. And you just look at them like they hate you. They have such little respect for you that they are just going to stand there and lie right to your face and tell you how all this money is just going to magically pay for itself. Like it's just poof, and it's all fixed. And don't you worry your sweet little head about that $3.5 trillion. It's virtually paid for. Don't even think about it. And you're like, you guys are stealing it, aren't you? You're planning to steal all this money, aren't you? That's what this is about. We know what you're talking about. You don't want us to look at what you're doing with it all. And so it's just this weird gaslighting that's happening to us. Like we're just instructed to not, you know, look at information.
Well, yeah,
it's crazy.
And 2 planes hit the towers and 3 buildings fell. And we're not supposed. We're the remnants of the Shanksville plane, and we're not supposed to ask questions.
Un-American.
Yeah.
It's un-American to question any of this, you know. So, but you have to give them credit. You know, they're totally shameless. You know, they have no shame at all. They will lie straight to your face about all of this stuff, and because they don't respect us. And frankly, after you watch Black Friday with people lined up at the stores and then knocking old ladies out to try and get like a $3 DVD player, like I don't know how much I respect us either. You know, like we part of us that we have to take some responsibility for our behavior as Americans, you know, and some of our insanity. Like I watch that sometimes and I go, yeah, I wouldn't respect us either. Well, look at our behavior. We're animals. We're savages. We're out here just like lowest common denominators. Like I don't blame them for wanting to exterminate all of us. You know what I mean? These people, I mean, it's just frustrating.
But with Black Friday, you know that all the college bowl games and Super Bowl are coming up, and you know they don't want you, smoke dope during the game. That's much not good. Don't take CBD, but watch all these beer advertisements.
And now gambling. Now every other ad is gambling.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's all about controlling your money. You don't need CBD. There's the pharmacy down the street. We'll write a really expensive prescription for you.
Yep. Yeah, it's a disappointment. It's been sad to watch. We could have turned it around. I don't know. Maybe we still can. I guess there's still hope for America, but we got to get real honest with ourselves about what's going on, and we got to distance our relationship from the corporate mainstream media. They do not want what we want. They are pathological liars. That is their function. They are good at what they do. Their job is to manipulate people, and that's what they do. So stay away from it.
Except for nightlight and macroaggressions.
That is correct. We try our best to be a source of good information. We may not be right about everything. Of course we're not. But we are interested in getting it right.
Okay.
At least I am. I just want to see if we can figure this out as best we can. Put our heads together and get out of this.
I think you're on the right track, and you are illuminating your readers with all of your research. They're all, your comments are footnoted where you're getting your examples from. It's all. I think you have a couple excellent books that should be read to wake people up. And we're down to like 2 minutes, unfortunately, and I want to make sure that you're given enough time to plug your podcast and where to get your books and anything else.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I enjoy our talk, Mark. We always have a good time. We always get into the insanity of it all. People can find my podcast, Macroaggressions, in audio format wherever podcasts are available, in video format on David Icke's platform, Iconic, on Rockfin, on Odyssey, sometimes on YouTube. And my website is theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. You can find information about all the books there and the podcast and pretty much everything. You can keep track of me there. And I'm on Twitter, @macroaggressions, but I make no promises. I've already been thrown off once. I expect that to happen again at some point. But I'm there for now, so happy to connect with people.
Okay. Well, it's, we're down to a few seconds. I just want to thank you for being a guest, Charlie. Thanks, Barbara, for producing the show. Barbara will be back tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern for a fascinating show. And thank you, listeners. We'll see you tomorrow.